Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of Puck on the Parkway. Because we're not going to be talking about Devils. Well, we will a little bit, but we're talking about something else a little bit bigger than hockey at this moment. We're talking about the Four Nations face-off. James Birle here with Daniel Rebain. We just spent the last 30 or so minutes talking about the New Jersey Devils. Now we're going to turn our attention to what we'll be missing, well, what they'll be missing during this break for the next 2 weeks, and that is the Four Nations face-off. The United States, Canada, Sweden, and Finland all facing off. And you heard Sidney Crosby say it about 800 times on commercials, Four Nations facing off. So this is going to be the first time that NHL players have been able to participate in a international hockey tournament since, I believe, the 2018 Winter Olympics.
Nope,
Or no, the
2016.
2014,
20,
2016, 2016
World
World Cup of
Cup.
Hockey
Yep.
and the 2014 Winter Olympics. Excuse me. Got my years mixed up there. But this is as exciting a time for international hockey as ever. There's a couple of issues with the tournament that I'm sure we're going to discuss, but
Yeah.
first and foremost, let's talk about the hockey that's going to be played on the ice. This Team USA has got a saucy looking roster. Team Canada, of course, you can't write them off, and then Sweden, probably the favorite of the two Scandinavian teams, and Finland, who have really surprised some of the bigger teams at many tournaments,
Mhm.
both junior and senior in international hockey. This is as exciting as international hockey can get. The best players from these four countries facing off. So first and foremost, Dan, how are you? Let's jump right into it. And which team would you like to discuss first?
I'll just say I've been waiting for this for a long time. First tournament that we get to see, Connor McDavid, Cale Makar wear Canada jerseys, Austin Matthews, and
Instead of Team North America.
yeah, instead of Team North America, the Kachucks, Jack Hughes, like all these, US born guys or whatever, US, representing the Star Spangled Banner, the stars and stripes. Um, let's start with Canada first because I'll say it. We'll give it to them. They should be the favorites, right? And in
Mhm.
my opinion, you know, they've dominated when it's been best on best. They have dominated in recent years, and they should be the favorites. FanDuel has them as the favorites barely, but they're the favorites. They should be. They've won, they won the gold in 2010. They won in 2014 as well, right? Or no?
Yes, they
Yeah.
they I believe they did.
So they've won the last two Olympics with NHL players, and then I kind of forget the 2016 World Cup. Who won that?
Canada beat Team Europe, I
Okay,
believe.
so
Unless did
Canada,
Team Europe win and I forget that? All I know
yeah,
is the US laid an egg.
yeah. The U.S. didn't win a single game, so I think this is the first tournament for a lot of almost I think this whole team, this first tournament, uh, all together, best on best. But let's talk about Canada first. They've brought up a really seasoned roster, I would say. They have the two best players in the world on their team, and you got to give it to them. They still have that talent in Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon. But once we go through all these lines, defense and goaltenders, I think they have some serious holes that could get exposed. But let's start with this forward group. I think this forward group might it's probably the best overall if you go, lines 1 through 4. I mean, you want to read them out for us?
On Team Canada,
Yes.
so line one, from right to left, Mitch Marner, Connor McDavid, Sam Reinhart.
Ooh,
It's pretty darn good. And then line two, I think it even gets better. Nathan McKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Mark Stone. I
yeah,
mean, you've got size, speed, skill on that line. Line three, Seth Jarvis, Braden Point, Brad Marchand. And then line four, Sam Bennett, Anthony Cirelli, Brandon Hagel. It's pretty
yeah.
darn good for the forward core. Do you want to cut it off there or should I keep going?
If you want to read out the defense, that's fine.
Yeah.
Go
The
ahead.
defense pairings right now, Kale McCarr, Devon Tays, Colton
Mhm.
Parayko, Josh Morrissey, and then Drew Doughty, who replaced the injured Alex Petrangelo, and
Yeah,
Shea Theodore.
injured. Um, yeah, I think if you look at that forward group, I think that's probably the best. You know, if you compare the 14s, it's probably the best forward group going forward. I think if you have a guy like Sidney Crosby on your second line, Like that's
It's pretty
crazy. Even
special, man.
even though he's like he's a bit older now, but like he's still playing like he's Sidney Crosby. And then you have like Brad Marchand on the third line. You're like, oh my God, there we go. Like Canada's got they've got the role players and they've got the skill to match with anybody in the tournament on their forward court. But I think the biggest problems they'll face is that defense and in goal. If we look at the defense, a lot of offense on that on the back line or on the back end. And in a short tournament like this, defense and goalies win championships. So if we're in a close game, or if they're in a close game, do you have the confidence that they could shut it down?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm not going to bet against these guys.
No, I mean
Yeah,
they're
I,
they're they're the favorites for a reason. But I'm
yeah,
just saying if you compare certain defenses to Canada's, they're
I think, I think, I don't think there's a single defenseman as good as Cale Makar in the whole tournament. For one, he's got to get that out of the way. Um, I think as a whole, the U.S.'s best answer for that would have been Quinn Hughes. Unfortunately, he's not going to be at this tournament due to injury. And that matters for Jack Hughes as well. They don't get the opportunity to play together. That sucks. But I still think top to bottom, I would rather have the US's blue line, I think maybe, especially with the season that a guy like Zach Rowensky is having, right? Like
Mhm.
he's been so phenomenal. And then he's going to be probably on the second pairing behind Adam Fox and Jacob Slavin. Like that's a pretty good luxury. As for Sweden, I think they got a pretty darn good decor as well. They're going to have Forsling and Dahlin on the third pairing. It looks like that's pretty good. Um, and then Finland, they're right up there with them. They got injuries on that blue line as well, but they have a solid core. I think Canada can only confidently say that they have a better blue line than this Finland team. And I think, you look around the roster, except maybe in goal, Finland have the weakest team here. But they still have a remarkable squad too. So I think the separation between these teams is like that much. It's
Yeah.
that much. I really do, with the exception of Finland on defense, I do think that Canada, yeah, probably a step below the US and Sweden in terms of how good their D is, but I don't think it's going to be big enough where you notice that, they're getting picked apart out there. I think they're going to I think they're I think we know what it's going to come down to for Canada, and I think we're about to get there. I
Yeah,
don't
you
think the
can
defense is going to be their downfall. Instead, it might be behind the defense, and that's going to be in goal. There's too much talent on any of these teams to expect not to face shots if you're a goaltender. And with a trio of Jordan Binnington, Sam Montembeault, and Aiden Hill,
oh my.
I'm not. I look. Aiden Hill's a Stanley Cup champion. Jordan Binnington's a Stanley Cup champion. Sam
Sure.
Montembeault has had to deal with being the goaltender in Montreal now for what has been awful seasons. He's not had a good team in front of him, and he's been a trooper. I do not think that any of these guys would see playing time on any of the other three teams in this tournament. And I do think that if Canada are to have an Achilles heel, it's going to be between their pipes.
I mean, talk about a fall from grace in goal. Like Canada, for the longest time, like early in my life, had the best goalies around. Like, Martin Brodeur, Luongo, Curtis Joseph. I mean, Patrick Waugh. I mean, and then
Carey Price,
Carey Price,
Marc-Andre
Marc-Andre
Fleury.
Fleury. Like, they produced all these elite level goaltenders. And now, for whatever reason, obviously they have some good goalies playing this season, like having career years. But obviously, before the season, when the team was being picked, these were the three best guys, you would say. I mean, that this is where the biggest downfall of the team is going to be if they, wind up not winning the tournament. And that's the thing. I think they're gonna have to go outscore their opponents. Like, I think they're gonna have to average like 5 goals a game. I think that's just gonna have to be their, path to victory in the tournament is like average 5 goals plus a game. I just don't think they're going to be able to, win a defensive game 2-1. I just don't see it. Maybe the defense in front of them is better than I'm giving them credit for, but I just don't see it with with a team that doesn't have a goalie, you know, owning over a 900 save percentage this season. Maybe that changes in a short tournament. Maybe that changes because they're wearing the maple leaf on their chest. But right now, numbers are numbers. All three of these guys are not having great years. So I think if Canada's gonna win a tournament, they're gonna have to, outscore teams like crazy. I think they're gonna have to, five, six, 7 goals
Yeah.
in those 3 games. And I just don't see them doing that against the US and Sweden team.
I don't think it would be out of the question for them to pull it off, but I think I agree with you. They're going to be back up against it if they're not going to be getting the goaltending. All right, but I'm going to put you in the hot seat now, Dan. John Cooper is Canada's head coach for this tournament.
Yeah.
First game is tomorrow, I believe, or maybe it's tonight for Canada.
No, it's Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay, so first game is tomorrow for Canada. Who are you starting in goal?
It's an
It's a tough
interesting.
one. It's tough.
I think you probably go Aiden Hill, just because he's got the most recent success. He plays on I would say the better of those 3 teams that those goalies are coming from. So I think he kind of understands a better defensive system. He'll still have Shea Theodore in front of him, so he kind of knows.
Some familiarity.
Yes, knows some familiarity. But all 3 of those guys are whoever gets that first start, it's going to be on a short leash. Like if they struggle in that first game against Sweden, that's a tough game to start with. If like at least with the US they get Finland. To get Sweden in that first game, obviously it's up in the belt center for Canada. But if you drop an egg up in that game, that just starts the tournament off. You would have to go from Sweden to play the US in game 2 on that Saturday. They have to come out really strong. They have to have a terrific performance from their goalie. So it's going to be tough for them. We'll see. I think they have the offensive firepower to do it, to outscore teams, but in goal, that's going to be the biggest problem for them.
100%. 100% that'll be their biggest problem. And, for me, I think I agree with you. I'd go with Aiden Hill. Yeah, going to have some familiarity, going to be used to playing with a really good team in front of him, more so than a guy like Montembeault. But I think another edge that he gets here is size. Because if you got 3 goaltenders, you're not sure where you go. At least get the one that's going to cover the net the most, right? I think Aiden Hill's not super reactive goaltender. He's a center yourself goaltender, and I think that makes more sense in tournament hockey for me. You don't necessarily. Sometimes you catch someone who's on a magical run, and maybe Binnington or Montembeault or even Aiden Hill could do that. But I think if you're going for a consistent figure that you know what you're going to get behind you, I would choose Aiden Hill over the other 2.
Yeah.
And if you told me in 2023 before the Stanley Cup playoffs that we'd be talking about Aiden Hill as the starting goaltender for Canada in an international tournament just a couple years down the line, I wouldn't have believed you, but here I am saying it myself. So that's Canada. I think we should finish with the U.S. So let's talk Finland.
Yeah. The U.S.'s opponent in game 1.
U.S.'s opponent in game 1, and we got our old friend is on the roster here. Erik Haula coming back from injury. Don't see him down as part of these forward lines at the moment. I think he's being used as an extra in practice. I don't think they have any leaked reports from practice yet.
They didn't really practice in their first day. They only had 11 skaters on the ice, so we don't really know their lines. Those are just projected lines that James is gonna read out. I expect Erik Haula to be in the lineup. He brings something that most players don't have. He's really good defensively, penalty kill, and he shows face-offs. Obviously, Finley has a bunch of those guys because that's their motto is defense, defense, defense. That's why they've won a lot of tournaments, and we'll talk about why they've won so many, World Juniors and men's championships, etc. So, how does the Daily Face-Off have them lined up?
Yeah, let's take a quick look at these. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up now. They don't have officially, like you said, haven't really fully practiced. I think that's going to make for a very interesting dynamic. You only get 11 guys on the ice 2 days before you start off a tournament with the 4 best hockey countries in the world, sans Russia. Um, let's talk about it. Their top line, I think, is probably going to look something like this. Maybe exchange one or two, but they've got Patrick Laine, Sasha Barkov, Teuvo Teravainen.
Mm.
Line two, they've got Mikko Rantanen, Sebastian Aho, and Artturi Lehkonen. Big Carolina Hurricanes flavor so far. Then on the bottom six, Capo Caco, Rupa Hintz, Mikael Granlund. And then the fourth line, Joel Armia, Anton Lundell, and A2 Luosterainen. I hope I said his first name right. I've never actually read it out loud before. To the D pairings, Olli Mata, the veteran, and Esa Lindell, Henry Jokiharju and Juuso Velamaki, Urho Vakanainen, and Nico Mikkola to round that out, a current and former Ranger there. And then in goal, you've got Jussi Saros, Kevin Lankinen, and remind me who the third goaltender is?
I have no idea.
I'll have to pull that up as well. But overall, that forward core, that is very deep.
It's a solid
very,
team.
very deep.
It's a very solid D, and this team would be better without injuries. Obviously, Miro Heiskanen is out.
Yep.
Probably the rest of the regular season, unfortunately. They're just missing a couple guys here and there that would make the team even better, I think.
And Rasmus Stalainen as well as Yanni Hakanpää. So really thin on the blue line due to those injuries, but keep going.
Yeah, I think, they're going to be a tough game in the first game. Obviously, Sweden's a much better, talented team, I would say. But when Finland puts on that jersey, they become a different type of breed, man. World Juniors, we've seen it all the time. Men's championships, we see it every year. They're always up there. They just play a different style a game than most teams that do internationally. They play a really structured game, like they're an NHL team, and for whatever reason, it just works for them. They can grind out games. Like they're a team. Like even with a lesser back end, they can really grind out like a 2-1, 3-2 type of game internationally, especially with a goaltender like Jussi Saros and net, and that forward group. I mean, that's a really good forward group. Very deep, very 200 foot oriented players all over that lineup. So it's gonna be a tough matchup for the U.S. But I think they'll be able to pull it out in game one. I just think talent wise they'll be fine. But that's a really good team for Finland, even with the injuries.
I think another thing that might help them with that if they have such little time to prepare together. I mean, all these teams have very little time to prepare together.
Yeah.
But I look at the roster and I feel like, there are guys who kind of fit on the lines that they're being played on.
Exactly.
I look at the US team, I'm like, you've got first liners playing on the fourth line. Same with Canada. But I mean, Capo Caco is a guy who is used to playing third line minutes. Joel Armia, Luosterainen, these are guys who can play bottom six roles.
They know their roles. Yeah.
Anton Lundell is a middle six guy. A little unfair that he's playing on the fourth line, but I think he's a guy who brings some physicality as well to the table. Yeah. Granlund, Hintz, Kakko, like Rupa Hintz does not belong on the third line, but I mean it makes sense though that he could do a job next to guys like Granlund and Kakko.
Yeah.
For Finland, their downfall is going to be this blue line. It just absolutely decimated the injuries to Ristolainen, excuse me, and Heiskanen. Like Heiskanen was going to be your top D guy. It hurts that he's not there. They'll have the goaltending. You think that Canada won't have. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is the third goaltender. But with the season that Lankinen has had, I think he's going to be the de facto backup to Jussi Saros. And Erik Haula, I hope he gets to fit in somewhere into this team because right now I think he is the extra forward. And I think about the season he's had, that probably makes some sense. But, for his sake and for the Devils fans' sake, I do hope he gets in there. You can't write off this team. No. They play such a great disciplined style of hockey. They always do at tournaments. And I really do think that they have, the chemical makeup. Each line feels like they belong where they're at. I could not say the same about Canada. If we look back at Canada's team, that fourth line, Anthony Cirelli, Sam Bennett, Brandon Hagel, it doesn't scream like it's a first line, but I'd believe that would be a second line. I look at Brad Marchand, Braden Point, Seth Jarvis. I mean, those are all top six guys. Like it's a little bit of a different flavor in terms of Finland and Canada, US. If the third line for Finland's out there against the third line for Canada, with the exception of Marchand, I kind of like Finland to like grind out in the corners and maybe force chances in front of the net. I don't know. I think it could be interesting. But I think Finland, it's you're going to get a tough battle. It's just going to be about can they mitigate some of those misses that they have on the blue line.
Yeah, it's a real trap game. You can't overlook this team because obviously, you expect to beat this team, right? On
Right.
paper, they've got the U.S. has the players, but you can't overlook them. You got to go play the game. We've seen it every year at World Juniors. Like we saw it this year with the World Juniors. Finland takes a 3-1 lead against the U.S. and obviously the U.S. claws back and eventually wins in overtime. But they're a really good structured team. They're very disciplined. They know how to play the game the right way. 200-foot game. They'll go grind you out in the corners, like you said. I think they could easily upset the U.S. I'll say that.
Oh yeah, and they have before.
Yeah. So you got to take this game seriously. I think the U.S. will be ready. So let's see what happens on Thursday. I think that's going to be a really good game. So on to Sweden, I guess.
Yeah, and just
Mm,
lastly, Mikko Koivu is one of the assistant general managers for this Finland team, and
yeah,
a bit more close to home, Tuomo Ruutu is the assistant coach for this Finland team.
there
That's
you
a name you
go.
probably haven't heard in a long time. If you're a New Jersey Devils fan,
Devils
he'll be
legend.
supporting Antti Pennanen, the head coach for this Finland team. But let's stay in Scandinavia. Let's talk about Sweden. The head coach is Sam Hallam, and Daniel Alfredsson will be their assistant coach. We were going to have goaltender Jacob Markstrom feature for Sweden. I think maybe he could have challenged to be the starter
Oh,
as
he
well
was the
for
starter.
the team. I
Yeah,
think
he
he
was the
was.
starter.
It would have been between him and Olmark, but with the season that Markstrom's having, I think he definitely would have started.
Yeah,
Um, it would have been great to see, but take these 2 weeks to get healthy, man.
yeah,
That's where we'll leave that. He's been replaced by Philadelphia Flyers goaltender Samuel Ersson. Talk about a downgrade, and then William Karlsson is going to withdraw due to injury, and he's been replaced by Ricard Raquel. So without further ado, here is the Swedish team from right to left, starting with the first line: Adrian Kempe, Elias Pettersson, Philip Forsberg. To line two, William Nylander, the Canadian-born but Swedish native, Mika Zibanejad, and then Ricard Raquel. Line three gets a little bit younger: Lucas Raymond, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Jesper Bratt, our guy. And then the fourth line: Gustav Nyquist, Elias Lindholm, and Victor Arvidsson. I feel like that falls into the same problems that the U.S. and Canada have, where we're talking about the top Swedish scorer in the National Hockey Leagues playing on your third line. We're talking about you've got Victor Arvidsson and Elias Lindholm. I mean, those are guys who play 200-foot games. Playing on the fourth line, I think they'll be better served than maybe Canada's fourth line. But still, for me, it feels like that's not a bottom six type of line. Onto the defense: Jonas Broden and Victor Hedman is the top pairing. Victor Hedman, the
yeah,
captain for the Swedish team. That's pretty darn good. Second pairing: Erik Karlsson, Matthias Ekholm. I mean, that's pretty darn good as well. And then the
yeah.
third one, it almost gets better: Rasmus
This
Dahlin,
is like the best one.
Gustav Forsling. I mean, we've known for a while that Sweden has had pretty good defensemen. Victor Hedman been at the front of that conversation, and Erik Karlsson too,
Yeah,
for a very long time. But I mean, this is just ridiculous. And then we go to the goaltenders: Philip Gustafsson of the Minnesota Wild, Linus Olmark of Ottawa, and then of course, as we mentioned, Samuel Ersson of Philadelphia. I think it's going to be a toss-up between Gustafsson and Olmark to start there. But
yeah.
what do you want to talk about first?
I mean, I just want to talk about the best line on the team, and that's that third line. I
Yep,
mean,
100%.
like it might not look like that on paper, but if you, it's not even biased with Jesper Bratt. I just think Eriksson Ek and Lucas Raymond are just those. They got it to them, and you had a guy like Jesper Bratt there. I think that might be their best line going forward, especially you look at the second line. No offense, but like Mika Zibanejad has not had a great year and a half. So obviously maybe he turns around wearing that Sweden, the three crowns. But I think this is a really good team overall. I mean, we'll get to the U.S. next, but I think this is the second best overall rounded team. They have goaltending. That their defense is just remarkable. Like the
Staggering
the
how
the
good that
third
defense
pair,
is.
the third pair is Dahlin and Forsling. Like those are the two of the best
It's
defensemen
ridiculous.
in the
You
league.
you've
So
got one of the best puck movers from the D zone in Forsling, and then you've got one of the best skating and size defenseman in Dahlin. Like it's not fair.
Yeah, and then obviously the forward group, you got Elias Pettersson up there. You got Timo Ter who was the first line again?
You've got Forsberg, Pedersen, and Kempe.
Yeah, I mean that's a that's a first line right there. I mean,
Yeah,
so I think overall they're a stacked team. They're gonna be one of the front runners to push for that one and done game down in Boston for the gold or the trophy, whatever you want to say. I'll say gold. Um,
I believe it counts as a gold. Yeah.
I mean, this team is really good on paper. I'll say that.
And I think they're going to be good on the ice too. I do agree that I think some of the lines here have been a bit misplaced, but I maybe credit to Sam Hallam is probably trying to spread around some of the skill in this
Yeah.
lineup, try to outcompete certain lines. I think like if I look at the Finnish third line against this Swedish third line, for example, Granlund, Hintz, and Kako. I mean that's very talented, but Bratt, Eriksson, Ek, and Raymond. I mean I think more
Those are like
skill.
three of the best young players in
Yeah.
all of hockey.
I think that that's going to be a speedy, skillful line that whereas you get the goal scoring and even some youth from the top line, Pedersen, Forsberg, and Kempe.
Yeah.
I do think you're gonna be outworked by that Sweden third line. I think that that's kind of a diamond in the rough, really, for the Swedish team. And if I looked at what their power play units are, I don't know if these are set in stone, but considering that it's 1D and 4 forwards, I do believe that they did practice these. The first pairing is Eriksson Ek, Raymond, and Zibanejad with Nylander and Victor Hedman on the point. And you've got the second pairing, Bratt, Pedersen, Rickard Rakell, and then the point is Carlson and Forsberg. I think that first line, you get a really good balance of size, skill, and then the second pairing, it's the same sort of thing. You get that good balance.
Yeah.
But I'm scratching my head as why does Jesper Bratt not fit on that first power play unit?
Uh, I was gonna say, why is Zibanejad even getting special teams? But that's just here or there. We'll talk. We don't have to talk about that, but I think you brought it up that those both power play units for Sweden very well balanced. You got Victor Hedman with a bomb on the back end, and then you got
Yep,
Carlson who could also
got a bomb.
he's got a bomb. So like, they're very well balanced power play units. They fit each role that they're looking for, each player's role. I mean, that second power play unit, Brad, Pedersen, Carlson,
Forsberg,
Raquel,
bro, it's
Like
ridiculous.
Raquel's had a great year on a
Hmm.
on a terrible Pittsburgh season. He's a sniper. He'll be that guy with the right-handed shot. They're they're gonna cause problems. I'll tell you that they're gonna cause problems.
And just another thing to shout out our guy on the second penalty kill unit next to Elias Lindholm is Jesper Bratt. Gustav Forsling and Matthias Ekholm are the defensemen there. Um, yeah, and I think he deserves to get looks on both sides of special teams. He's been so valuable on every end of the ice for the New Jersey Devils, and I think he is certainly good enough to be not only on the first line of the Sweden team, but on both sides of special teams. So, I mean, that's a pretty darn good roster. Let's bring it back home, though. Let's talk USA.
Yes,
Um,
sir. Come on, baby.
and our guy, Jack Hughes, is there. And I think he's going to be a big part of this team. So let's look at the first line from right to left: Matty Tkachuk, Jack Eichel, and Kyle Connor. Boy,
Oh,
that's tasty. Second line: Jack Hughes, Austin Matthews, Jake Gensel. Pretty good, too. And then the third line: Brady Tkachuk, JT Miller, Matt Boldy.
oh.
And then the fourth line: Dylan Larkin, some guy named Vincent Trocek, and then Brock Nelson. So, I mean, talk
Let's.
about depth. Talk about
I'm.
depth. Let's break it down there. Let's before we get to the defense because we also did talk about the defense a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, just it brings a tear to my eye to see how good this U.S. team is, bro. I mean, bro, when you're growing up with no offense, like you had Jamie Langer-Bruner. Obviously, I'm repping his captain jersey right here.
Legend. Don't say anything bad
Legend.
about him.
I'm not saying anything bad, but like when you had teams like that was your elite talent was Zach Parise in 2010, right? Zach Parise,
Zach Parise
Brian
was
Giunta, Jamie
Gio.
Bruner, like those guys. Like those guys were really good players. But when you got like a guy like Austin Matthews, Jack Hughes, Matthew Kachuk, like I could only dream of these players growing up. Like watching that, 2010 gold medal game. They're there. Like imagine these type of players in that type of game. It's just like this is what I've been looking forward to. Best on best USA. And I just want to shout out the development program. There was a stat like
Yeah.
15 or 16 of these guys come through the development program, and that was the whole point of the US program up in Michigan was for to develop players for this moment. Like all these players have played with certain guys coming through that program. Jack Hughes was playing with Boldy, with Sanderson, I believe, as well. Like, all these guys have touched each other's careers for the most part, other than, Jake Gensel. I looked it up myself. Jake Gensel, Kyle Connor, um, Hellebuck, and like one or two other guys didn't come through the program, but like all the top end talent came through the program. Went wherever they did go after those 2 years. But man, they've produced some really good players, and this might be the start of something special for USA Hockey. But what do you think about this forward group? Because I think it's really well balanced, especially when you got a JT Miller, Brady Tkachuk third line. I mean,
That's
boy,
you got some power on that line.
yeah, that's the thing with like the US. Like the US has the skill, but like with some of their skill guys, they can do that meat and potatoes type
Yep.
hockey. That's why you can have like a Brady Chuck on that third line, a JT Miller on the third line, a
I,
Dylan
I think I
Larkin
think
on that
I
fourth
think
line.
I think that first line has also kind of got that. I think like
Yeah,
Eichel's a guy who likes to dig in.
exactly.
Kachuk,
Yep.
obviously, we know all about him, and Kyle Connor, he's a sniper, but I don't think his 200-foot game gets enough credit. And I got to be honest, with the exception of that Devils second line, Gensel, Matthews, Hughes, I think the other three lines all can do that meat and potatoes thing that you mentioned. And while we talk about it's hard to say that those lines look like bottom six lines that you need to be successful. I think that that's kind of always been the ethos of USA Hockey is that they
Yeah.
always have that sort of thing about them. But now that you've added guys like Jack Hughes and Austin Matthews to international competitions, you've got that skill that you didn't
Yep.
necessarily have before. I'm just going to read off the 2016 World Cup of Hockey roster. If I'm looking at
Oh,
just the centers here, let's talk about the centers: David Backes, Brandon Dubinsky, Ryan Kessler, Joe Pavelski, who had a great tournament and is a
yeah.
legend, and then Derek Stepan. I mean, it's okay. It's
Like
not. I'll tell you what, it's not.
there's only
But
two guys that I'm like, yeah, those guys deserve to be there. No
it's not
offense,
Jack
like,
Eichel. It's not
yeah,
Austin Matthews. It's not Jack Hughes. It's not JT Miller. And it's not Vincent Trocheck. It's not that good. And then if
yeah.
I look at the rest of the forwards, look at the left wings: Justin Abdelkader, Max Pacioretty, Zach Parise, and JVR. It's okay. It's not Kyle Connor, Jake Gensel, Matt Boldy. It's not
Like
that
those
good.
like those guys were good in their primes, but like
Yeah.
I don't like there's like a couple of those guys from that roster where you're like in their prime, you're like, yeah, they make this roster.
Yeah, yeah. I obviously Pacioretty and Parise are there, 100%. But Justin Abdelkader and James Van Riemsdyk, James Van Riemsdyk had a great career as well, but I'm not sure if he sneaks in over some of these guys. And if I look at the right wingers, Patrick Kane, obviously in there,
Yep.
TJ, another one.
Mm.
But Kyle Palmieri made it. And as much as we loved him, I'm not sure if he deserved to be there. And then Blake Wheeler had another guy who's like a maybe. I don't think he's as good as either the Kachuk
I mean,
brothers
we have
or
to talk about the guys that aren't here, like
yeah,
Tage
like it's
Thompson,
crazy.
Cole
Tage Thompson didn't
Caulfield.
make it. Cole Caulfield's not
Like
here.
those are guys
Ridiculous.
that didn't make this roster that would have made any other roster for the US in past, years that they brought best on best. So I think the depth is there, like the high end talent is there for USA hockey that they haven't had in the past, which is it's just great to see. Forward group is there. Let's get to the defense.
Yeah, and it stinks that unfortunately Quinn Hughes won't be here because
Yeah.
I mean he's just an unbelievable stud
He's
and
like he's like the MVP. He's up there for the MVP. Like he's
yeah,
carrying that team so much.
yeah, a poor guy too because they must be heavy. With that said, Jake Sanderson did replace him over the weekend to join the squad. He's currently the extra defenseman here. Top pairing, it's a bunch of Metropolitan guys. You don't need to know their names. It's Adam Fox, Jacob Slavin. Second pairing, Charlie McAvoy, Zach Werenski,
Oh,
and then the third pair. Like, yeah, come on, that's ridiculous. And then the third pairing, Brock Faber and Noah Hannafin. I mean, that's talk about balance, talk about elite. I think this rivals Sweden for the best in the tournament.
yeah, I think if Quinn Hughes is here, they have
They take it
they clear
100%.
Sweden. I think Sweden right now probably has the best one without a Quinn Hughes, but it's by like hairs, hairs right there. Like,
And to bring it, this is only hairs better than Canada's. That's how close those
yeah,
three teams are.
yeah. I think, having a guy like Brock Faber, like for the next like decade plus on that back end is ridiculous that he's developed into the player he is so early in his career. And you can just put him next to a guy like Noah Hannafin. And then you talk about that second pair with a Charlie McAvoy and a Zach Werenski. Oh my God. Like those just
It's pretty tasty.
what a pair. Like you have the offensive, two-way forward and Zach Werenski that's leading NHL defenseman in goals scored, I believe, still to this point,
And,
unless
and
Cam
he's still a
McCarr took him
shutdown
over.
guy
But
too. It's
yeah.
insane how good he is.
And then you got, Long Island's own Charlie McAvoy fucking holding it
Old Charlie.
down. Big boy, just holding it down from Boston. I mean, I just can't talk about the talent that this team has, man. It just brings a smile to my face, and I can't wait, man. Thursday can't get here fast enough, man. And then of course, first pair Adam Fox, they're good too. So
Yeah, they're pretty decent. Let's talk goalies before we get to the special teams. The heavy favorite for the Vezina, heavy favorite to go back to back, Connor Hellebuck, is the de facto starter. He has to be, but I mean, he's going to have two incredible goaltenders breathing right down his neck in Jeremy Swayman and Jake Ottinger. And now
I
let's
mean,
be clear. The U.S. has always really had great options in goal. I think back to every tournament they have, right? If I think
they've
back
always
to
had that like one.
yeah,
Yeah.
if I think back to 2010 and 2014, Johnny Quick and Ryan Miller, I mean, like take your pick, right? Like those are both very, very reliable guys. In 2016, you had Quick, Ben Bishop, who was excellent, and Corey Schneider, who was as good as it gets as well. So this is nothing new for the U.S. But you've got Swayman, who was Vesna caliber last year. You've got Hellebuck, who was the Vesna winner last year. Vesna caliber this year,
He is the
MVP
Vesna,
caliber
yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
I think he's a shoo-in for the Vesna at this point. And then you
Yeah.
got Otter, who's been right there for his entire career, even when he was a youngster. So I mean, like this is like these guys are gonna push each other in practice, and like that's only gonna iron sharpens iron. Excuse
Yeah.
me. And I do think obviously it's gonna be Hellebuck, but wow, what
I'm
what good three goaltenders you have.
I kind of wanted to bring this up when we were talking about Big Mike and the Devils video that we kind of recorded. I think college hockey has become the new goalie developer because like all three of these guys coming from college hockey, um, you know, all from different places, but college hockey is just developing goalies right now. You see the guys that are down there for Team USA with Trey Augustine at Michigan State, Fowler at BC. There's this kid over at Western Michigan who was with the U.S. World Junior team. I mean, it's crazy that the U.S. is developing all these high end elite goalies. Um, and now we have three of the like if any team could pick one, like they probably all three of these guys would start potentially for each
Mm-hmm.
team. Like that's how good all three of them are. And I mean, Canada wishes they had a
At
Jake
least
Otter,
at least one.
an Otter on their team, a Jeremy Swayman. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. I just keep going back to the talent that this team has, and it's like it's the best it's ever been. Like obviously, we've had legends play and wear the U.S. jersey in the past, but this talent all across the roster is ridiculous. To replace a Quinn Hughes with a Jake Sanderson is obviously he's going to be the extra skater, but like man, like that's a guy that can step in and play
Yeah.
25 minutes for you if you need. You know, we talk about guys that aren't even here, like a Luke Hughes. Like Luke Hughes is going to be eventually on this team in the future. So it's really good to see. Um, I'm really excited to see what Brock Faber brings to this team defensively. He's been a rock for Minnesota as such a young like player to be like their best defenseman on the team. It's crazy. Obviously, he's Minnesota born, so he's playing in front of his friends and family. He's living the dream out there. So now he gets to put on the U.S. jersey one more time for, actually not one more time, but for the next 10 years as one of the best defensemen in all of, the world. So um, I'm excited to see this team defensively and in goal. I think they can, if they really wanted to, they could go win the game 1-0. If they just wanted to go shut a game down, they could go win a game 1-0 with this type of team. Obviously, they're not going to score only one goal. They'll score, 3, 4 here and there, maybe even a 5 spot somewhere. Maybe in that Canada game with no goalie in the net. But I think this team is probably the best group of players that the U.S. has ever put together.
I mean, that's high praise because there have been some pretty good U.S. teams, but I think it'd be hard to argue against that.
Just talent wise. I mean,
Talent
like
wise, no, I
obviously
agree.
that 96 team, we all still kind of look up to those guys that, went up to Canada and won the World Cup in a 3-game series after losing game 1 down in Philly. They went up to Canada and won game 2 and 3. So, you know, uh, I'm excited to see what this team can bring. You can talk about who's running the team, coaches in the front office, because we know a bunch of those guys.
Yeah, let's talk about. I was gonna say the special teams first before we got
Oh
into
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
background
yeah.
because Jack Hughes is currently centering the first power play unit. I believe that Austin Matthews is probably going to take these faceoffs, and
Yes.
I would implore Mike Sullivan to have it be that way.
Oh, wait,
Um,
wait, wait. Hold up. We got breaking news for Canada.
oh, breaking news!
John
We
Cooper
don't often get that on
John
this.
Cooper announces their starting goalie.
Is it Aiden Hill?
It is Jordan Binnington.
Wow. Okay. All right. They didn't go for size. They went for the smallest of the three. And
So,
you know what? You know what? I don't hate it. Jordan Bennington's a guy who was able to capture magic in a big playoff run back in 2019. We all remember that.
yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe he's hoping for the same. I don't know how good his numbers have been in the NHL this season. I'd have to
They're
look
in
at
the
it
800 somewhere.
in the 800s.
All three,
Yikes.
all three goalies have 800 save percentage. So,
He's currently 46th amongst all goaltenders in the NHL. If I let's aggregate that for starters and backups. Among goaltenders who have played at least 20 games, Jordan Binnington is 31st in the NHL
not good.
with zero point 0.2 goals saved above expected and goals saved above expected per 60. He's 18th. So about league average. He's below the likes of no other Canadians. So I think if you're going by the numbers, he's ahead of Montembeault and Aiden Hill in that regard. So maybe John Cooper knows something we don't know.
We'll see. But yeah, back. That was just breaking news. Back to the back,
Let's jump
back
back.
to the real team. Back to the real team. USA Hockey. Power play.
Yeah, let me read that off. It's Jack Hughes, Matty Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, and Adam Fox.
Uh,
The only thing that I regret is that it's Adam Fox and not Quinn Hughes, because I mean
yeah.
that's perfect.
Uh,
And the other issue I have actually is there's only one puck. I don't know how these guys are going to spread this thing around that efficiently.
I to be fair to me, I think those are the perfect guys to kind of have on that first unit because obviously you'll have
Ooh.
Jack
And Matthews on
and
that.
you'll have Jack and Fox kind of on that blue line kind of circling around, but you have like a Matthew Tkachuk in front of the net. You have Austin Matthews ripping the puck, and then who was the fifth guy?
Eichel.
Oh, Eichel.
I think you put Eichel in the slot, you put Kachuk net front behind the net, and then you
Yeah,
put
I think
Fox on the point. Hughes, Matthews are your half wall guys, and I think that's pretty gross.
I think all three of those guys that are going to be closer to the net are willing shooters. So I don't have any complaints there because if you looked at the Canada one, I think there might be too much passing. I think they brought it up on the Spit and Chicklets podcast that I was listening to before this. There,
There's
they,
no
they,
sniper on the first pairing.
there's really no like shooter on that first line for Canada. for the U.S., they've got guys that will shoot the puck. Even Jack Hughes, he'll shoot the puck.
Yeah.
So that's a that's a ridiculous first line. Like,
Yeah. And then the
oh man,
second grouping, um, it kind of stinks for the Kachuk brothers that they kind of play the same role to a degree that they're obviously going to be split up here, but they've got Kyle Connor, Gensel, Brady Kachuk, Matt Boldy, and Werenski. It definitely takes a big step down from the first pairing, especially, Werenski, as good as he's been. I think you really wanted Fox and Hughes to be your quarterbacks here. But Kyle Connor, that's a sniper.
I
Matt
mean,
Boldy, that's a
yeah,
sniper. Gensel, that's a sniper, and Kachuk, do the dirty work,
yeah. I
right?
mean,
Like you got everything you need.
like if that was your first power play unit in the NHL, you're like, wow, that's a sick unit. So I think they even have more shooters there. Like you're not gonna know where the puck is going to be shot from. I'll say that. I think um on either unit because like they could pass if they want to, but you don't know if they're gonna shoot. And if you don't know that Austin Matthews is gonna shoot the puck, you're already beat.
Mm-hmm.
So um, that's a stacked power play unit. I think personally, even without a Quinn Hughes on that first line, I think that rivals Canada. I think that's up there. I think you can pick either one.
I mean, if let me read off Canada's real quick just to go back to it, and then I think then we can make our predictions for the tournament at large.
Yeah.
Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, and Sam Reinhart. Like Sam Reinhart's kind of in the clown's uniform compared to all the guys who are in camo there, if you know what meme I'm referring to. But I mean, that's still ridiculous.
I just think there's
That's
going to be
that's
too much
arguably
passing.
yeah, I don't disagree, but that's arguably the four of the best. Like could be you could make a case that those are the four best players in the NHL.
Yeah.
McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, Crosby, and they're all on the ice at the same time. Just don't take penalties. Do not take penalties against this team. And if you're playing against the US, take penalties because I want the US to win. But I think any last words you want to say before we hop into predictions?
No, I think, overall this tournament is exactly you know, obviously we want more teams going forward, and I think that's on the NHL for not setting this up earlier than they should. They had all the time in the world to set this tournament up with more teams like the Czechs, like Russia, like Slovakia, like all those other teams, like Germany. Like we're missing a lot of players that aren't
I
with
think
with these teams. And I feel like, that's on the NHL, but I understand that they're the ones setting this tournament up themselves. And I think in the future, I think they have an announcement that they're going to announce during the tournament about
right.
the 28 World Cup. And I expect all the big teams to be there or
Yes, yes,
be able
yes.
to qualify at least to
Right.
play in that. So
And I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot to mention there are several issues with this tournament. It is sort of has the feeling, right? Like it's like this is the test run for what the 28 World Cup of hockey will be because 2016, was not exactly what Gary Bettman wanted to get out of it. And it's a possible now that we hear that Bettman might not be around for the 28 World Cup of hockey. He seems like there's an expiration date on his time as NHL commissioner.
mm,
Only four teams in this tournament, and it's also because it's NHL run. It's only NHL players. I think that's the reason why they wanted to limit it to a small field for now. I don't know if you could fill a whole team of Germans or Slovaks or
that's probably true.
trying
Yeah.
to think. You could certainly do it for Russia and Czechia, but I think for Russia, obviously the geopolitical reasons are dictating some of that. I don't know if that's fair to the players. We can talk about that if you want, but
Yeah.
um, and there is now a discussion about how many people are going to be attending this thing. It's only in two cities, and for it to be like midweek in the middle of February, it's tough for people to make the travel to Montreal if they want to see their beloved teams. If you're not already from Canada, if you're not already from around that area in Canada, if you're not already around from within that area in Boston, and you're a U.S. fan, I think it's going to be difficult. There's still tickets up for, and I'm saying this as a good thing, not as a bad thing. There are still tickets up for $20 or so for the U.S.'s opening game against Finland, but that one's in Canada,
Yeah.
and I think that makes it a little bit more tricky for some folks. There are still, relatively affordable seats for the Canada Sweden game at the Bell Center as well. So if you are interested and you are willing and able to go to see these games, I would implore you to do so because there's going to be tickets together and we all want international hockey to thrive.
Yeah,
So be the change yourself if that's something you're interested in. I think, coming mid-season, the short preparation, I think makes it difficult for fans to be able to attend. But, if this is to be the test run for what will be a bigger splash in 2028, I think it's exciting. I don't want to see Team North America and Team Europe again because I think it's
no,
just silly to do it that way. But like what you said, a qualifying opportunity, and opening it up to IIHF players, right? Like I think that makes it for a more enticing tournament and a
mhm,
more real crowning of a champion.
yeah,
Because I think it's really tough to say that you are the best hockey team in the world when Russia's not there, when the Czech Republic's
exactly.
not there. Like
Yeah,
if I look at those rosters, I think Czechia could really rival these teams. I think Russia obviously could. Both of those teams have excellent goaltenders.
mhm,
Lucas Dostal, the season he's had, I'd love to see him wear a Czechia uniform. I mean, take your pick with the Russians.
yeah,
You're gonna have
exactly.
you're gonna have to cut one of Bobrovsky, Sorokin, Vasilevsky, or Shosturkin. You're gonna have to cut one
Yeah,
of those guys.
yeah.
I don't know. I think they got to ramp up to that in the future. I'm still so excited for the Four Nations. Let's get into predictions.
Oh,
Tell me.
I just wanted to make
Oh,
one
you got
more,
another thing. Let's go.
just
Let's go.
one more point. They brought it up again on the Spin Chickless pod, but I think if they're able to, move this from a mid-season thing and put it to the preseason before the season
Yes.
start, I think that would make it better, because obviously we're missing so many players with injury and or that are just not taking part because they want to, continue their NHL season, um, like Petriangelo out in Vegas. So it sucks to not see everybody there, like full teams, like a Finland. Finland is probably the most hurt by this
Yeah.
with Heiskanen and all their injuries, Ristolainen as well. So I think if they're able to move this to like September and sometimes in September, because obviously the season for an NHL starts mid-October now. So if
Hmm.
they're able to put it mid-September, I think that would do well for everybody. And then I
I
think that
wholeheartedly agree.
and then the biggest point, if you can, you can run it yourself, but have an agreement with I just, help them kind of, uh, get players from around the world, like the other leagues. Like there's some really good players for Sweden and Finland that probably could make it on their rosters as well. We've seen the men's worlds, like those teams
Yeah.
always
There's really good teams, man.
perform. So um, we'll see if that comes to fruition, especially for like a team like Germany, as you said, Czech
Yes, I was
Republic
gonna
as
say
well.
yes.
Like those teams, most of their good players play overseas. So
Yeah, like there are players in the Dell who are good enough to play in the NHL or good enough to play at least in the American League,
yeah,
and would be valuable members of a German team, for example.
yeah,
And you know what? I mean, we're putting on our soccer hats here, I suppose, because they have international tournaments all the time. But often these international tournaments can be springboards for players' careers. So you
exactly.
you have like a Czechia team where you've got fourth liners of guys who play in native. They play for Kladno, for example. That guy has 4 points in 4 games and against NHLers. Let's get him over, right? Like
Yeah.
like I think that's something that we're missing out on
And
here.
we got to
But
bring up like a country like Latvia as well. Like
right, Latvia,
they've made
yeah,
so many strides these past couple of years in the men's worlds and world juniors. So
Belarus as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Belarus
Belarus.
has made strides. Kazakhstan has made strides. Like
Hmm.
I think as fun as this is going to be, and while obviously Latvia and Kazakhstan could not compete with these teams, I think we are missing out a little bit, not
Hmm.
giving those teams the opportunity to be here. I
Yes.
hope, like you mentioned, in 2028, there's a more robust invitation or qualification process. That
Yeah.
would make me very, very happy. And for another, I hope that the Winter Olympics opens up NHLers again, because that would make me very, very happy as well.
Yeah, we'll
I
see them
doubt
next
it.
year. We'll see
I
them
mean, like,
next
like
year.
I doubt, but here's where I doubt a lot of players will commit. I have my doubts.
I'm opposite of you. I think,
Okay.
whoever is gonna, I think almost all players, if they get selected, are gonna go.
All right. Well, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you're right. Let's get into the nitty gritty.
Predictions.
Give me your. It's a round robin, so give me your table 1 through 4. Who
Mhm.
finishes on top? Who finishes second, third, and fourth, and then who wins the final.
All right, so I'll start fourth. Unfortunately, I think it is Finland. I think the injuries kind of takes their toll on the team. I think they're a really good team. I just think, they're just gonna struggle with the talent of the other three
Yeah.
to go against. But I think, they're a good team. I think they could probably squeak out a win, maybe like an overtime win. But I just don't think it'll be enough to push for that final spot. Um, I'll go I'll go first place. USA, obviously. Come on. I think they win all three games. I think they win one in overtime. I don't know who that's going to be against, so I think they finish with 8 points. Um, and then second place, I'm going Sweden. I think
Okay.
Sweden. I think Sweden is going to shock a lot of people in that first game, and I think that's going to set the tone for the tournament. I think Sweden wins that first game, and I think they finish second place. I think it's just going to be too much for Canada. I think the balance of Sweden on that back end, like we talked about, in goal, that I think Sweden is more rounded. I think they know their roles. I think Canada's obviously got that high end talent up front, so they can obviously potentially outscore Sweden. But I just think in these type of games and these type of tournaments, defense and goalies win you those games. And I think with the structuredness of a Sweden team, I think they're going to be able to grind that one out up in the Bell Center in game one on Wednesday night. So I think Canada finishes third. I don't think they make
Wow.
it to. I don't think they make the gold medal game, and I think U.S. versus Sweden in that gold medal game, and I think the U.S. takes it. I think USA wins their first gold medal since 1996, a World Cup of Hockey, and I think this springboards the U.S. heading into the Olympics as the favorites.
I mean, it's going to be tough to disagree with you, but I do have a few differences. You alluded to it, and I'm going to mention it, and because that's something I love, they're doing the 3-2-1-0 point system that
Yep.
the IIHF does. 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for a shootout overtime win, 1 point for a shootout overtime loss, and then nothing for a regulation loss. Hey, this is an NHL tournament. Do it for the NHL. It's a better system. It just makes more sense. Why is winning a shootout worth the same value as winning in 60 minutes? It's not. They're completely different things. The
Yeah.
shootout isn't even hockey. It's so
No, it's
stupid.
not. It's not.
Wake up. Like this is such a better system. I digress. In fourth place, unfortunately, like you mentioned, I do have Finland. I do think it's because defensively they're just going to be overworked. I don't think that losing they can survive losing Ristolainen as well as Heiskanen. Like
Yeah.
if maybe they had Heiskanen and Ristolainen wasn't there, they had one of the two, maybe I'd give them more leeway. But unfortunately, I think that second and third blue line pairings are going to be victimized, especially if they take penalties. And especially like Finland's generally a disciplined team. They're going to take a penalty somewhere. It's going
Yeah.
to be difficult for them to deal with. Um, in third place, I'm going to go with Sweden. And the reason being is because I do think that with their backs against the wall, I do think that they could absolutely surprise Canada in their first game. But I do think that with Canada having their backs against the wall in game three of this round robin, there is no way for me that they don't beat Finland. And I think that they might lose to Sweden. They might get they might get an overtime point against the US. I do think that they will have enough to get by Finland and squeeze into the second place position ahead of Sweden. Sweden, for me, they might win against Canada. They probably will win against Finland. I don't think they beat the US in the third game. I think Canada sneaks in. And then in first, obviously, I have the US. I think the most well rounded team on this roster. So for my final, if you're caught on, that's the US and Canada. That's going
In
to be
Boston.
that's going to be in Boston. I mean, that's pretty special. It'll only be the U.S.'s second game in Boston should they make it there. Their first two games will be in Canada. I think that makes it really intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Canada versus U.S. in Montreal. I think that makes it really difficult for the Americans. I do still think they might even be the favorite in that one. But when the lights shine the brightest, guys like Sidney Crosby, guys like Connor McDavid, guys like Nathan McKinnon, guys like Kale McCarr, I think they're going to be the difference makers. I'm going to go with Canada. I do think that
Wow.
U.S. are the better team, But in a final, I think the experience and the quality on that Canada team at the top end is just too good. I think it'll be a win could be I'm blanking on the word,
Galvanizing.
galvanizing for the United States. Thank you. But I think a loss could as well. I think a loss could light the fire under guys like Austin Matthews, like Jack Hughes, and for the Boston guys as well. They're going to be in their own backyard. Plenty of Massachusetts guys on this team. I think those guys are going to wake up and say, you know what? Next chance we get, 2026, 2028, whatever it is, we're not going down. So for now, I do think Canada takes it, but I could be very wrong. Canada might not, like you said, might not even make it to the final game.
Yeah, I think we both have our differences right there, and I could see Canada making it, but I just don't think with if it was up in the Bell Center like the final, I would definitely have a different opinion. But
Hmm.
it's just whatever it is with that Maple Leaf coming down into Boston, they
Hmm.
always seem to choke it
That's a
up.
good
They
point.
always
That's a
seem to
good
choke.
point.
So
Maple
with
Leaf in Boston.
with the stars and stripes on their chest in Boston, that rowdy crowd, they're gonna be spitting some venom at those Canadians, especially even Brad Marchand, who's the Boston captain. He's gonna be hearing some things that he's never heard in his life.
You remember post 2010 Winter Olympics? Sidney
Yeah,
Crosby was booed at the Igloo.
yeah. So I'm telling you, like if it's USA Canada down in Boston, that's going to be a
Gonna be massive.
venomous crowd, and the same thing for the U.S. Canada up in Montreal for that game too. The U.S. are going to hear some things for all the political reasons going on around right
Yeah,
now,
that's true. That's
so
a good point.
they're going to have their own experience of it up in Montreal. All I'm saying is this whole tournament is gonna be great. I think it's a
Yeah.
win-win. Obviously, we hope that more teams are invited in the future, but you know at least it's here. This is
Hmm.
gonna be such a great thing for the game of hockey. All these new fans that haven't seen like the best players in the game ever play for their ever wear the jersey. They've never seen Connor McDavid wear the Maple Leaf. They haven't seen Austin Matthews wear the Stars and Stripes. I think it's going
Right.
to be a magical thing for the game. I think having these games on TNT, ESPN, and ABC are going to be huge for the sport. So I can't wait, man. Hopefully the U.S. wins, but even if they lose, I think I hope they take it the way that you said they take it and they get their first taste of best on best men's international hockey, and they're like, no, we're not having that again, and they go win gold medal out in Italy in 26.
Man, that'd be something special. But
Yeah,
I mean, we're just a day away, I think, from the puck
yeah.
dropping between
Canada, Sweden.
Canada and Sweden, and then the following day, U.S. and Finland. It's going to be an exciting one. Uh, it could go either way. All four of these
Yeah,
teams have unbelievable talent, and
exactly.
we're just living in the best timeline for hockey right now. Um, we'll see what the hell happens with the national anthems because that'll be exciting. Or depending how you look on it, be very, very not exciting, very, very gross. So that is all we have the time for the Four Nations Face Off preview today. Daniel's going with Team USA.
Come on, baby.
I want Team USA to
Come
win,
on, let's
but I
go.
do think Canada's going to take it. Let's see what happens at the rest of this week. For Daniel Rebain, I've been James Birle. This has been Puck on the Parkway, special edition, talking about Four Nations Face Off. We'll see you guys after the break.
Peace.